The only job I'd ever had in the writer's room was writer's PA. The blacklist came out right as the week that I was going in to pitch Kevin Feige on Loki. We'll get Tilly Norwood to come in and
she's actually next week's guest, so she'll be ready to do this for us.
She's going to be on season 2 of Chad Powers. That's great.
Welcome back to The Hollywood Hang, a podcast about the highs, lows, and hell no's of this crazy industry. Today, we have a super, super special guest that I'm extremely excited about. Michael Waldron is an Emmy award-winning writer from Atlanta, Georgia. He created and served as head writer and executive producer for Marvel and Disney Plus's Loki series, and wrote Marvel's Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness for Sam Raimi. He created and executive produced Starz wrestling drama Heels, starring Stephen Amell and Alexander Ludwig, which is now available on Netflix. He is also the executive producer behind the upcoming Hulu comedy series Chad Powers, starring Glen Powell. He began his career on Adult Swim's Rick and Morty, where he won an Emmy for his work as a writer and producer on season 4. He co-founded a feature film and TV production company, Anomaly Pictures, in 2023 with Adam Fasullo. Michael, thank you for hanging with us.
That's the best. That's the best intro I've ever gotten.
I tried.
Got it all right.
And the best news is actually that Chad Powers is no longer upcoming. People can enjoy it as me and Nick have been doing.
We will fix that in post. Yeah.
Oh, great. You'll use Sora to
that would be guys. The Sora videos are getting out of hand on my Instagram feed.
We'll get Tilly Norwood to come in and
she's actually next week's guest, so she'll be ready to do this.
She's
going
to be on season 2 of Chad Powers. That's great. This is a good crossover.
Honestly,
there's like some
beautiful.
Synergy here.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us. We are very excited to talk all things Chad Powers, but we also always kind of like to just like take a few steps back in career trajectory, because a lot of our listeners are like new, upcoming, emerging filmmakers. And we just kind of want to talk about your humble beginnings, if you would be so kind. Or did you always want to write? How did you end up in Rick and Morty room?
Yeah. Well, I would love to talk about that. And thank you for having me. I'm so glad to be on here. I even put up a Chad Powers. Look at this.
Yeah,
that's
on
great.
my
Some
otherwise.
PD.
It's some really selling here. I think I always wanted to write. I think that I always loved movies, and I think writing was the thing that I was probably just getting a pat on the head for from the time I was a little kid. It's like nobody was really like that excited about how I was playing like baseball or sports, but like the adults were really stoked about my little stories. And so I was like, all right, I guess I better stick with this. And so I loved it. And I'm from Atlanta. I went to University of Georgia, and at the time when I was there, it was right before the big film boom in Atlanta. And so working in this business felt so far away. And I remember I was like really the first person that felt accessible to me at that age, that was somebody who worked on something I loved, who was writing about what it was like to be a writer, was Dan Harmon. And he was posting, just his ramblings of what it was like to be a young showrunner on Community. And I read that, and it suddenly, like, I remember it making it seem accessible to me, like, oh wait, maybe you could do this. And so I moved to LA, and I got into Pepperdine's screenwriting program, and that was great. Had a couple of great professors, and through a classmate got an internship on the very first season of Rick and Morty, because Dan had been let go from Community, and he'd come to do his little Adult Swim show. And really, that it's like, I don't know, to the extent I was watching some of y'all's stuff that you're like, you gotta do it yourself. You gotta hug it. I look back and I'm like, in a way that kind of seems insane to me now. I'm like, man, so I can't believe I pulled this off. But I was like, I got to get Dan Harmon to notice me. And I started a company softball team. And I asked Dan, I was like, do you want to play? I think it's probably the first thing I ever said to him. I was like, do you want to play? And he was like, I probably thought it was a bit, didn't think there'd be follow through. And he was like, yeah, okay, I'll play. And so Dan and several of the Rick and Morty writers and Dino Stamatopoulos all played on this softball team. And I went from being the lowly intern putting stickers on books to their coach. And the best thing about that was to organize games and practices. So I adopted this sort of very Coach Taylor-esque persona in my emails that was really, it was all just a grift to be like, I'm a good writer. I want to do this. And through that process became, good pals with Dan, and we won one game all season. We're the worst team in the history of the Burbank recreational softball league. If you can imagine, the Rick and Morty crew was the worst. But we won one game and we stormed the field like we won the World Series, and we went out for drinks after. And I'll never forget, Dan had just been he was getting brought back to Community for season 5. And he asked me there if I'd come be the writer's PA, which was really going to be my first gig. And that was in all the, I've been so fortunate in my career, but in all the great moments, that's the most thrilling. I don't think I'll ever top that.
I love that. Also, sports has been a through line for you.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, I'm a huge sports fan. I guess that's it. I love sports, and I love playing sports and watching them growing up. My dad and my mom, my whole family, and a lot of my friends back home are great athletes, and I'm their dorky artist friend. But I still love it.
We have so many different people who come on here and give us different takes on how to break in and get your first opportunity. So now we have this new take, which is to do the softball route.
Yes, yeah.
Start it. Yeah, and maybe the applicable thing there, whether or not you can start a softball team, was finding a way to an organic way to get my writing. You can express yourself as a writer in other ways than just a script. A script sucks to sit down and read. I don't even like to read my own scripts. But being funny or interesting or just having a unique voice in an email, even tells me, if I were people I'm working with, I'm like, oh, I'm interested in the way that person thinks and puts words together. And so that's probably the takeaway there. Just figuring out whichever way you can start forcing them to read your writing.
Yeah, it's like a writing sample doesn't necessarily have to be a screenplay. There's more accessible ways to do it, and it stands out more, right? Because people are reading lots of screenplays and it can be very boring.
Yeah, and you don't want it to be the sweaty, you're trying to, this was again, it was, I look back, I'm like, that was really lucky. And I'm glad I did it. And maybe, and maybe the other thing that, at the time, I was in no way playing 3D chess. I was just I want Dan Harmon's autograph. That was. I didn't think I'd ever have a job in show business, and but maybe the other thing that I did was I managed to sort of reframe myself. Instead of being the intern, I was the coach. Which, in one way or another, it was a position of leadership. And if you want to, if you aspire to be a showrunner or a filmmaker or something, the sooner you can start showing those leadership qualities, the better.
What do you think it is about Dan Harmon as someone who spent a little bit of time or a lot of time in that circle? How is he able to seemingly so easily talk about story in a like I feel like talking about story in a way that's easy to understand and entertaining and funny and deep. There is like an art to it, and like I even revisit, there's a million YouTube clips of short little kind of just like rants that he has, and it's like there's these nuggets of there's this one that I love where he's talking about to be a good writer you have to understand you're not a genius, you're Daffy Duck, and there's just like all these analogies and like. What do you think is it about him that he's just able to pontificate so well about the writing process? Because not every writer has that.
Well, he's a genius. He's like a one in a gazillion genius. So probably that above all else. I think there's not like a more talented assembler of words alive. His command of that, and I've sat alongside him at bars and in front of, we've written together a lot. And he's the most talented I've ever worked with. And so there's just a baseline level of like intense expertise. But I think it comes from this place of like, I don't know. He somehow fuses his genius with like a very like base authenticity. Is what It's like he talks about writing like it's rolling around in the mud, which is what it is. Like it's not a glorified. It's ugly. It's hard. It's like and it is. You're Daffy Duck at best. And Dan would always say, Dan's whole thing, to aspiring writers is always just like finish stuff, write something so bad that your mom would tell you to never write again. and that's, and it's true. It's like, that's where you can, because then you've got something that you can start revising. And I think he's just very honest about the imperfections in his own process and how hard it is, but also kind of the magic of it all. And yeah, I don't know. I learned so much from him, and I tried to. I've got a bunch of story circles on the Chad Powers wall. It's always fun to me when I have my writer, it's like that's how we broke Loki, was with story circles, and it's like when I have writers who have never done that or seen the story circle before, which is Dan's method of like his version of the Joseph Campbell story breaking, or like hero's journey. When I have writers learn that and then fall in love with it, and then suddenly it's like it's fun to see that spreading as a way people like to break story.
And when you ended up as the writer's PA, did you have samples ready, or were you like, I got to get these going so I can prove that I can level up?
No, I did have samples ready, and I think that's an important thing. That's a thing that I try to tell people when I talk to them, give people advice. Is like I had another mentor, Chris Cluse. Chris Cluse was a professor of mine. He was the showrunner of Night Court back in the day, just like a legendary comedy writer, funniest person to ever live. And he always said, he was like, you basically get to play one hand at the blackjack table, and you don't even know when you're going to get to play it. So you better play it smartly, and you better be ready. And so that to me meant always sort of knowing like, what is the sample that it's like, what is the thing that's gonna, if you want to give to somebody and say, I can do this for real, I can level up. You want to have that. In my case, I had a half-hour sample, and I had written Heels. Because while I was in grad school, I never really thought of myself as writing drama, but the truth is I started watching Mad Men, and I was like, I want to rip this off. This is so good. And I actually found myself, I was like, I think I might be a better dramatic writer than a comedy writer. And the other thing that I found, even just in the responses to it, I do think this is true, is that it's actually easier to break in with a dramatic sample than a comedic sample, because it's just a piece of drama can be judged more objectively. Comedy is a very subjective thing. I take it from the guy with a half-hour comedy out in the world right now. It's like the responses to that are way more subjective than if you just have something that's a little more straight dramatic. And so when the opportunity that came my way off of Community wasn't in fact to get staffed on Community, but it was a kind of a sideways thing of a young manager, or actually he was an assistant at the time, he was a fan of Community and wondering, is there anybody on the support staff that I should know? And I sent him the pilot of Heels, and we went out, and it's 12 years later he's still my manager, and he helped. And he introduced me to Adam Fasullo, who's, I've started my company with, and helped sell that show to Paramount TV. So it's like that was kind of the magical.
Wait, is this Harry?
There. That's Harry Langsfeld.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
This is like the smallest. So Nick is repped at Untitled, and my boyfriend Eric is a manager at Untitled. So this is like the.
Well, there it is. Yeah. So Harry. Yeah. I mean, so Harry's the goat. It's like, yes. And I owe everything I have. This shirt. These headphones.
So if he wants those, you're just like, yeah.
Yeah, it's all Harry, and he's been with, we've been in the foxhole together ever since. But that's, and I'm lucky. That was right opportunity, right time, but I guess I tipped the scales in my favor because I had the right sample.
Do you think there's an art as well to kind of like reading the room and figuring out how to utilize those opportunities? Because when you're support staff, like when I was an assistant, I had not normal bosses who were like, we know you want to be a writer. We know you're probably hiding final draft while you're on the desk. And like, you can do that, but also like, just get your work done. But I know that there are people who, like when you're running a show and it's like stressful and so many things are going on, you don't necessarily want your writer's PA to come up and be like, hey, by the way, like, so I have the script. So how do you think people should navigate the sort of, like figuring out how to utilize those opportunities when it's okay to kind of like bring up the fact that you do have these other aspirations versus, you're on the show with support staff, you need to get shit done and kind of just do your job?
I think that it's you have to follow your instincts, and part of it's you have to get okay with. We think of writing and we think of like what we do is a very insular thing, and it is, but this is a business of total and complete collaboration. It's like you have to understand just how to work with people, which is just so understand just sociologically when is the right time to approach people, and ask about this. It's like that skill is as important as knowing sort of how to build tension in your second act, because if you're in a writer's room, you need to know how to, like, as much as it is pitching ideas or writing drafts, it's also just communicating with your collaborators. If you're on set, how do you work with crew? How do you work with actors? That's the job. So I guess it's, you always err on the side of caution, and sort of generally assume that your bosses are under a mountain of stress and dealing with lunacy that you can't even begin to comprehend. And I don't know, it's like typically I think or they'll ask you, It's like that's really the time is they'll ask you, and or it's like in the case of, well, yeah, I mean that's in the case of people I've promoted before. It's sometimes it's like I don't even need to read their stuff. It's a personality thing, and I've seen enough of their writing over the course of just, hey, will you just take a crack at this scene? We need, and it's just it's actually like when I'm staffing, it's like reading a full pilot. It's hard to find the time to do that. I definitely think people do that. Like I said, the only thing I hate more than reading is writing. So,
and what do you like? I think I would assume you like TV more, but you've obviously written feature and TV world. Which one are you always gravitating towards doing TV?
No, I wouldn't say that I like TV more. I would say I bounce back and forth. I mean, I don't know. I love movies. It's like being on the set of, it's like there's a reason I've kind of gravitated toward that big Marvel world, and like, being on the set of whether it's Doctor Strange or Avengers, I love that. And the nice thing about features is you get to do something and put it to bed and move on. You're sort of, you're not, you're getting to play with new ideas. I love TV, I guess, for the opposite reason is, you can build audience investment and keep it going. So I don't know. I don't know that I have a preference. It's interesting to try and like, what audiences want out of the two mediums is very different, and maybe even more. And it's always changing. But I know when I started out, I was just like, it's the same thing. Just make it good. But it's like good in TV is, or what audiences want out of TV, I think is maybe different from what audiences necessarily want out of movies. And I also think that they train one another. It's like movie audiences now have been trained by audiences who have watched Breaking Bad and Game of Thrones. So it's like it's interesting how the mediums are always sort of informing one another.
On the topic of your features, I just have to bring this up selfishly. There's a script that you wrote that I love that was on the blacklist. I believe the full title is The Worst Guy of All Time and the Girl Who Came to Kill Him is the parenthetical. Over the years, so I'm a big, reader I try to keep up and read all the blacklist stuff. And that is a script that I feel like people often bring up to me. And I'm like, I've already read it. But just as kind of a fan favorite script. And my understanding of your lore is that script really helped your career. But I was just wondering, like, was that something you wrote that kind of was meant to be a great, cool sample? Because it is kind of a crazy out there movie that does feel like you. But do you think that script will ever get made? And like, what did that script do for you? Because I think a lot of people have read it and they're fans.
Well, thank you. It's crazy that I can't believe that script's still relevant. That really tells you. It really tells you the state of the world. The fact that I'm like, God, it's more relevant now. I'm like, that's really
yeah.
It's really problematic for all of us. I sold Heels, and and I was pretty young, and Heels went to Starz, and I'll bring it back to, there's a point to this, and Heels got ordered to a writer's room. And so I was like 29. The only job I'd ever had in the writer's room was writer's PA. And I remember day one, that was like the only thing I actually felt confident in was telling the writer's PA, I was like, this is how the lunch for everybody should look. And I was so intimidated and in over my head. And I hired a brilliant staff who held my hand, and we wrote a great season, and I fell on my face 1,000 times and then learned so much. we wrote a great season, couldn't cast the show. And so they put it on a shelf. And so suddenly I was like, oh, my meteoric rise, done. I'm toast, into my career. I'm not Paul Thomas Anderson. Fuck.
Flip a table.
Yeah. And so, so I was like, what am I gonna do? And Rick and Morty was staffing up for their 4th season. And so I submitted and was lucky enough to get that job. And so knew I was going back to Rick and Morty, but I had the feeling of, I want to work. I was like, I want to work in feature. I want to write Star Wars movies or Marvel movies. Like I want to do that. And my agents were like, you don't have a feature sample. Your sample is a like sad wrestling drama, like about like what? And I was like, but it's good. They're like, if you want those jobs, you need to write something in that genre space. And so I sat down. Like I said, I'd never written a feature before, and I watched my then girlfriend, now wife. We watched Big one night, which I'd somehow never seen. And I was like, man, what a good movie. And I was like, all the best movies, especially from the 80s, they're just like a great high concept premise with a love story at the center. Like that's all Terminator is. Just great friend. It's just a love story. And I just kind of, so I had the idea for that movie, which is like terrible guy, woman comes from the future to kill him because in the future he becomes president and ruins the world. But instead of killing him, they sort of accidentally fall for one another. And I wrote it and wrote a draft really quickly, and it kind of did the Harmon thing of just spit out a terrible draft. And then I sat down and revised it over another 2 months or so. And that, it got out there, went on the blacklist and everything. And I had the benefit then of, I'd never spent any time on a set. I didn't understand budget. And so I was like, jetpacks, dinosaurs. It's like a $250 million script. But when the blacklist came out, right as the week that I was going in to pitch Kevin Feige on Loki. And so it was like an amazing, and that was the sample that Stephen Broussard, who was the producer on Loki, that he read to like initially even meet with me. And so it exactly what my team told me it would do. It opened those doors. And, I don't know that script. I mean, I guess now if it was going to get made, it'd probably be me directing it, and I'd have to, figure out how to trim about $150 million out of the budget. But it is fun. And it's kind of, I guess I look at it, I'm like, yeah, it fits in line with a lot of the stuff I find myself doing, which is like a flawed protagonist finding their way to a better version of themselves, usually by falling for somebody who's a much better person than them.
That is literally one of my questions about Chad Powers, but we'll get to that in a little bit. So what the Marvel world, like that is like, and Loki is just like chef's kiss, bless your whole brain. What was like that, like to go into that world? It's just like so much, I think, bigger, broader scope wise than like what people even realize.
Into the Marvel world.
Yeah.
It was so fun and so exciting. And I think I benefited from not knowing what I was doing. As in not knowing much about it when I went into it. I wasn't a huge comic book fan, and I was a Marvel movie fan, but I wasn't like a diehard fan. I'd really kind of fallen in love with the movies as like Ragnarok Black Panther, Infinity War, like that run, Civil War, like that like real heater run that we went on. And I had nothing to do with this. But I contributed to the box office. But so I went in sort of blind to the process and expected, like, I guess thought like anybody else, like, well, I'm sure there's like an intricate plan that I've got to fit into and everything. And there certainly is. I think what I was just shocked by was just how wonderfully pleasant everyone is over there. Like Kevin Feige is the greatest, coolest dude. Like that's just the truth. And everything sort of like, takes shape from there. And the people who work under him have that temperament, because many of the top producers there are people who sort of started out as his assistant, on the first movies. And it feels like a family business. Like that's the vibe that I over there. And when I came in, it was right as Endgame was coming out, like I had to get Endgame spoiled for me, which was heartbreaking. I remember like pulling over in like a parking garage in Burbank, on the phone. Somebody's like, all right, so Endgame, like the Avengers, like they pull like a time heist. A time heist? But I think we had been in the writer's room for like 3 or 4 weeks when Endgame came out and had that insane opening weekend. And then I had to like pitch our first episode outline, and Kevin came in and I was like, congrats on, it was like, we were like the first meeting after that. I was like, congrats on the weekend. He was like, that's the past. I want to talk about the future. It's like that, just straight.
Whoa.
And it's like, that's Kevin. Like that's, and Kevin, it's like, and so I just had so much fun. And maybe the greatest thing about Marvel was it's really where I learned. I think I already knew so much about writing. Marvel is where I learned about filmmaking. And when I say that, I mean like part of Loki was working incredibly close with Tom Hiddleston. It's like working with actors. I tell writers all the time, I'm going to be a good writer, like fall in love with actors and acting in that process. Like that's who you're writing for. I think PTA said a script is just a blueprint for actors. Like I do believe that in a lot of ways. And so whether it was working with Tom or then, on Doctor Strange, that was insane because, Sam and I got brought onto that. And then like a month later, COVID happened and we, put together our version of the movie and then got shipped off to London and couldn't go. We had to stay there because like I couldn't come back and forth. My wife works in the medical field out here, so she stayed here. I was there. We'd like just gotten married, but because of the quarantine, I had to. It just didn't make sense. So it's like it really had this feeling of like you were over there at war, making and meanwhile you got Benedict like dressed as a zombie and everything. It's like it was all so crazy. And that process was just sitting next to Sam, for 2 years and just learning everything there was to learn about, again, working with Benedict, working with Lizzie Olsen, Rachel McAdams, these brilliant actors and how to talk to them and how to work with the camera department and everything. And then, and it's like how to translate that into the script that is sort of an ever evolving thing. And so, I don't know. The Marvel process is such a blast.
Do you think now, having worked on such big IP, and I'm sure you're at a point now where you've been floated lots of different IP, and I'm sure you're in a position where you can kind of choose what you want to pursue. But as someone who came from the Harmon philosophy and collective and like these shows that I think everyone in the industry knows, like especially Dan, like very creative minds, right? That are very out of the box takes often and just really great story brains. So like when you like in this day and age of, you know, the studio and this industry and right now and IP and all these things, like the candy and the stuff that I have to pitch on, do you think philosophically that there is a great story to be cracked no matter what the IP is? Like, because I know Dan is, there's movies that I've heard of that have never gone or got announced that I've heard his takes on just crazy things. But like, where do you fall in that? Do you think there are some things that are like, there's no story there? Or do you think there's always something to be mined?
Are you asking me if I think that no idea is too stupid to make something out? Dan always told a story about like they came to Dan. Somebody came to Dan. They're like, "Do you want to pitch, or do you want to talk about doing the Monopoly movie?" Which, by the way, I feel like now they're actually doing. And Dan's response was, "Can it be rated R?" And I was like, "That's everything." Dan and I mean, he and I teamed. It's like we wrote a script for Lego Batman 2. Like we were on like a nice little run of like developing stuff together. We developed a pitch for the Play-Doh movie.
I would be interested.
Which, you know, I mean, again, it was interesting. I think that. So yes, I love that vibe of like, what if it was good? Like that's kind of, it's like, that's how I always like to say it. Like, well, what if it was great? What if it was the best thing in the world? I feel like that's like the Lord and Miller thing, you know, 21 Jump Street. What if this was incredible? The Lego movie. It's like when I saw the Lego movie, I couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe how good that was. I do think that there are, but you have to, it's like when you take on those projects, you have to accept that like there's headwinds against them, you know, and that the audience is coming in maybe, you know, it's fun to say, well, you expect this to be one thing and I'm actually going to make it great, but them expecting it or having skepticism over whether or not it's going to be good can make it harder to sell. I mean, it's like, you know, to look at Chad Powers. It's like there's that show, you know, I think that was part of what drew us to that show. Me and Glenn, we were like, what an insane idea. The Eli Manning sketch, like a Doubtfire thing strung out over his show. That challenge, that was all the stuff that drew us to it of like, yeah, but what if it was actually hysterical? And what if it actually had a lot of heart and drama to it? But I do think that in a world where you really want audiences, you know, audiences have a zillion choices. You want to make sure that you're doing something that audiences are stoked to watch, you know? And so if you're making the Play-Doh movie, you have to ask yourself, like, do people really want to see Play-Doh? How bad
do they want to see the rated R version of the Play-Doh movie?
I do.
Yeah, exactly.
So
go
ahead. No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say that kind of brings me to like the Chad Powers of everything. This story is exactly what you said earlier. I'm like, this guy's a douchebag. And then he's starting to learn that like, it's kind of nice to be sweet, and like the people that you meet and the conversations you have like are so worth it. I was going to say like, it's a very timely subject, I think, for like young men. Were you thinking about that, or is this just always the thing you have been drawn to, which is kind of what you said?
It's funny. I'm like, I don't think of myself as always being drawn to that, but now I've made enough stuff that I'm like, oh shoot, like that's the. I hope I'm not that guy. But I do think it's like it's timely, and now more than ever. It's like, what is Glen's character Russ like? What is his? When we really fell in love with this idea is when we hooked into the core sort of emotion of it, which was, well, this is a guy who messed up, and he can't take accountability. He can't say he's sorry. And I feel like that's this like plague that infects us in the internet age, and probably forever. But like, there's just that act of being able to say, yeah, that's on me. Like, I messed up, and the links that somebody will go to not, the conspiracies that they'll believe in, the mask that they'll put on their face to be somebody else instead of just owning up to their mistakes is really interesting.
He believes in so many conspiracy theories. That was like my favorite through line of the show. Every time he brought up a conspiracy theory, I was like,
yeah, that's. Yeah, listen. I'm online. What can I say? I know.
What was the first connective tissue between you and Glen? Because you said they sent the short or the video to you guys. Were you guys already looking for something to do, or what was the how did that come to be?
Glen and I have been buddies. I had sought him out after I saw Everybody Wants Some. And we had a general meeting, like a Zoom, and became pals and knew we wanted to work together. And then we're both college football fans. And so we were like, I think there might be something here. And, I think it was, again, it's like the Doubtfire. That's one thing. We're like, of course, that's fun. That's like we know that, like, having that lie at the center, it's like the story will always have an engine. But as we really talked about his character, it felt like a very interesting, like, contemporary thing. And, Glen was already incredibly famous and was like becoming more and more famous. And even I, like, just, it's like, if I search my name on Twitter, it's a wasteland out there, it's like some of the Marvel fans, which is interesting. And that's like an interesting thing. And then we sort of like, we took that, and you think about these young athletes who, if they miss a field goal or if they just mess up a play, the instant, like,
so
negative, toxic feedback loop on the internet is so vicious. And how would that, if you're somebody who looks at that stuff, like, how would that mess with your psychology? And that's, there you go.
And it does. Oh.
On writing that character, because I feel like I kind of knew what to expect just knowing your stuff, but how did you find the balance of, or maybe when you have Glen when you have Glen, it doesn't matter, the note that writers often get about likable protagonists and people, the powers that be, being scared of people who are not instantly likable, because I think you kind of get your bearings in the first episode, but there is some, like, purposefully uncomfortable humor in moments. And by the second episode, I was like, oh, I love this guy. But was that any note that you guys got? And how do you figure out the balance of those characters?
Of course, that was a note that we got. And I think it was always a smart note. It was always coming from a good place, and I think that we were modulating that the whole way through. How much can we get away with? He had to be a flawed enough character that he would do this insane thing. It's like, to us, the show had such a, like, big buy-in, like, suspension of disbelief buy-in. We're like, everything else has to feel real. Like, we have to, like, have this, like, Breaking Bad level of realness to it, which means you've got to really believe this guy is low enough to do this. I think if you've got Glen Powell, like one of the most likable actors to come along and, years and years, then that gets you a lot. But yeah, he's a jerk. And I do think that, we're, audiences, and I saw this in the critical response, just from the reviews. I think that people, especially people who weren't like calibrated and knew what to expect, it's like if you came in expecting Ted Lasso, I don't know that you, I don't know what kind of time you had, or it's like, I think if you came in expecting Eastbound and Down, that was the correct expectation, and that was certainly much more the zone we were always operating in. And after we had made the show, it's just this inescapable discourse of, it is Ted Lasso, it isn't Ted Lasso, it wants to be Ted Lasso, but it can't be Ted. I was like, oh no, like Ted Lasso is a great show, not unfortunately not what we were doing.
Oh, this was it was so timely, and it was so like, I think Glenn, when he's like his character, like his actual true character, is so angry and like volatile. Like that's a very real experience that I see in him, and I really enjoyed it. Is it Danny? Oh,
Danny.
My God, like a scene
I love that character.
stealer. So when he's picking up the pieces of the vase, I was dying. I just think like the duo of them is like a very refreshing kind of like, so endearing, but also like they're both like sassy in their own ways.
Yeah, they're both. Well, that was the idea, that it's like Danny is arguably more psychotic than Russ. That it's like that we pair him with somebody who's just like, he's the devil on his shoulder. It's like he doesn't meet the angel on his shoulder. He meets the devil on his shoulder, who's like, no, more, like redline it, like, and that's what makes him so funny. But I think that what, if we're just talking about the story of the show, it's like why Russ connects with Danny and why Chad connects with Ricky is he's feeling, for the first time in so long, he's not feeling judgment, and it's just, this is a guy who has felt so judged by the whole world and judged by himself. And I don't know, that's so like, that's what's on my mind right now. And I feel like I feel like that's all everyone's doing on the internet all the time, is judging everyone and judging themselves against everyone. And I don't know, I think it felt like the thing that I wanted to talk about. I mean, so you guys haven't seen the last two, have you?
No.
And we ended, it was episode 4
look
on
at
a
that.
cliffhanger.
Oh, wow. So, yeah.
Celebration.
Well, I'm excited for you to see where it goes. I directed the finale, which was really fun.
Nice.
It was
exciting.
the first time I'd gotten behind the camera, and we really, I don't know, we took the show, as I set out to do. I think we took the show to an insane place, and I'm really proud of that.
It's interesting that so much of, and I mean this in a complimentary way, because I'm the same. So much of the context for the stories that you tell feel like they are tied to, not like the internet, but like you're aware of the things that are happening. You are plugged in. And I know there are some people who are like, oh, I don't scroll. I don't look at the feed. And it's like, maybe that works for David Lynch. But I think there is a level of like, if you're not doing that stuff, I feel like you're not connected to like the way the world is thinking right now. And it's good to just be like aware of that. Maybe for some people it gets in their heads too much, but I find it, I don't know. I feel like it is kind of necessary to engage with the world and understand what are people saying, even if it's stuff you don't agree with. Like what's the vibe of the world right now? The only way you know that is by getting online and scrolling.
Yeah, I mean, I have a a 1-year-old, a 1-year-old daughter, and until she is old enough to tell me what's going on, it's like I'm kind of responsible to the audience somewhat, and like unless I want to get left behind, I have to understand the world my audience lives in, and but I also have to balance that with I mean I'm probably like anybody, I've got to spend less time. And yet balance that with, you make a Marvel thing, you sign up everybody in the way, those things sell themselves. It's like something like this, like you want to go out and sell it. You want to go pound the pavement. So I'm like downloading TikTok, which by the way, I didn't have. And I'm like, all right, so what? and I'm like, I mean, I was really good at the internet for a long time. I think it's like right around the time TikTok was coming along, I was like, this has to be the one. At some point, I got to stop. And it's like this one, I can't try and understand as well as the other ones. But here I am, and this is where the audience is, and I do think it makes you a better writer, whatever you're writing about.
I think it's also, oh God, sorry guys, there's just a little passing by. It's fine.
Hold for sound.
Hold for sound.
I was giving the Marvel spoil. I was like edging close to Marvel spoilers you're gonna get.
I do think, it's also hard with the social media aspect of it all, because I think people are so quick. We saw this with our favorite movie last year, Nick. People do not want to give things a chance.
What movie?
Wait, why am I blanking? Monkey.
Better Man.
Monkey. Better Man.
Right.
We loved it, and we like made reviews about how much we loved it. And people who had not seen it were like, "You're lying. You
people
didn't
are just like
it.
Stupid. That has to suck. It has to suck.
Exactly.
It's a monkey movie."
And I think that's like the noise, like fighting through. That's like so hard to get to want to tell people like what's worthwhile and what's not worthwhile, and everything is worthwhile. So it's a very daunting. I have the brick now. If you want to like separate and then go online, I'm a big proponent.
Is it good? Is the brick good?
Amazing. You can do schedules, so like it'll go off at night and then it won't be on in the morning when you like want to grab your phone and ruin your own day.
But I can't just like take it off. I'm like
you gotta walk to the fridge.
Oh
yeah.
I don't want to walk to the fridge. I'm certainly not going to walk to the fridge.
That's like where mine's hosted up. But yes, I just think like the internet is so important now for stuff like that. But I also think people have no grace to anyone. And so the show kind of feels like that wish fulfillment of being like, I can start over and like be the person that I wanted to be and have this fresh start without everyone wanting me to fail.
Yeah, that's the and everything you can't control the context under which something comes out. It's like you can only you have to tell your story and stand behind it and just hope that it hits. And I think that what I'm really proud of with this is I just that story of like, all right, you mess up, you can't say you're sorry. You need to learn that. And you can't evolve. You can't get in until you learn to take accountability. I hope that that's an evergreen thing.
Yeah.
And I hope that maybe I've buried my own need to tell that story. And I can move on, start like writing about AI or something.
Well, I got on TikTok to like watch reviews last night after I like watched the latest episode, and I feel like that was also what people were like. The Eli Manning to this is like the same heart, but it's like so much more like thoughtful and funny and like twisted than like I think that you could imagine. Like Eli Manning to me just seems like a sweet soul. Like
yeah, I mean but he's clearly a sicko because he was in full support of this. But no, he was great. He was great, and Hulu 20th. It's like I think everybody supported it because they were also like funny. It's like they threw it's that word or that phrase that I'm sure it's hard. This is hard funny. And I'm like, what does that mean? Actually funny? Like, is that like, and I think maybe that's what it means. Like, or does it just mean vulgar? Like I don't know, but it's like, this is hard funny is what everyone kept saying. And I was like, well, then I'm going to keep testing the fences in terms of like how, just R-rated we can be, and I don't know, that felt fun and exciting too, because it just felt like we were taking chances.
I'm sure you're very busy with other projects and other things you want to work on, but in terms of, we do also like to talk about just like the current state of the industry, how we're feeling, the conversations we're having, and I'm sure you're in those rooms, and I'm sure you have a lot of friends in the industry. How do you feel about just where we're at in the industry right now and kind of like the future of the industry and moving forward and that whole situation? Because I do feel like, compared to last year, I'm like, oh, I feel better than that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It can't be worse than that. I'm optimistic. I try. It's there. This is if you've ever like made it's everything's a microcosm of the creative process itself. What is it like to write a thing? It's a million moments of doubt and depression, and it's never going to work, and I'm never going to figure it out, followed by breakthrough. And I, and I got that moment, and I push ahead, and somehow you do that enough times to where now you've written a script, and that's what writing, or that's what filming something is like. That's what a production is like. It's a million setbacks, and I can't believe it. What do you mean there's a hurricane coming? It's like we were shooting Chad Powers. It's like a chemical fire, like over by our production office. Like we had to send in hazmat teams to get our cameras. It's like there's always feels like there's force majeure all around you. And I think it's probably felt like that forever, as long as people have been making movies and doing this. And it's our job what makes us artists is, instead of wallowing, we say, great, let's get to work. Like let's make stuff. There's always a million reasons not to do this. And there's always a million reasons it's going to fail, or the business is going to collapse, or the script's not going to work. You can't sell this. Screw it, man. It's like I think that, so I'm optimistic, and you see a movie like One Battle After Another in the same year that something like Weapons is coming out, and it's just like there's so much brilliant work being done all around us. So I don't know, I'm encouraged, and I feel excited to be a part of it.
Awesome. We don't want to take up any more of your time. We know you've got a hard out. But thank you so much. Nick, do you have any other questions?
Well, we usually end with the same question, yes. Always.
Well, go ahead.
Okay, so you only need to pick one of these things. So it's up to you what tone to end on. But we like to ask people if they have an anecdote that's either a high, low, or hell no moment from your industry thus far. And hell no can be interpreted however you see fit.
Let's see. When I was first out here and I was in grad school, this is a high for me. When I was first out here, I was in grad school, and I was living in Santa Monica at the time, and I just adopted a dog, and I was like a poodle mix. Couldn't look more like a poodle. And I still have him. He's been my writing partner for 15 years. And I'm walking him around Santa Monica, like Colorado or something. I walk by a little, like a door, like a cage door or something, and this huge mastiff dog comes running out to the door, just barking, and somebody yells, "Bones, Bone Crusher!" And they run up and they get the dog, and I look at Booma, and it's Michael Bay.
His dog's name is Bone Crusher?
And his dog's name was Ben. It was the dog from Transformers 2, I think. and we just sat there and he was like, oh, sorry about that. I was like, no, it's fine. And it's like, in Armageddon is like a sacred text for me, like, and just had the most like lovely not even about movies, just like about our dogs. And it was just like a wonderful, and I'm just like talking to Michael Bay. And then I was like, Mr. Bay, I'm an aspiring writer. If you have any internships or anything, and he was like, yeah, my assistant will take your email. And I did it. And never went anywhere, but like that was my first like real brush with show business. And I was like, that's why I moved out here to have the stuff like that. And and it should never stop being exciting. I think if that happened to me now, I'd be just as starstruck.
That's amazing.
The key takeaways from this: get a dog, start a
softball
team, and you will find your way.
You'll be fine. You'll be fine. That's the trick. So
thank you so much. This was amazing. And everybody, Chad Powers is out on Hulu. You can watch it. It's hilarious. Have a great time. And then write to Michael on, I don't know, Twitter's a dead space. Just write your lovely, nice thoughts out into the universe, Michael.
Yeah, find me on LinkedIn. Find me on LinkedIn. Connect with me on LinkedIn.